So, you're probably wondering where the tier list videos have gone recently, and the truth is, I got a new table. It has a drawer, I put my MIDI keyboard on it, and I neglected my old reliable that I make all my tier list videos on. So, it's been a while, but we're back with one that you've been requesting so much. Yep, I'm doing a Star Wars tier list of the films and TV shows that I've seen. I haven't actually finished Bad Batch or Star Wars Resistance or Star Wars Visions. There's quite a few things I haven't seen. Let's just get straight into naming the tiers. The bottom tier, I'm gonna call something S for something. You know, it wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't good. You know, it was just, they did something. It's a really good name. Next tier, R for really wish it was better, because you know, some things, they just don't live up to the hype, and you just wish they'd been better because it could have been so good, and R for really wish it could have been better. Next tier, I'm gonna call A for adequate. I'm gonna assume you know what adequate means, which means we're on to W. Can you tell I'm spelling something here for, wow, that was reasonably impressive. Then we've got R for really, really, really good. Maybe that's too many, just the two really, really good. Okay? Hey, we've got 2 A's and 2 R's, which is definitely not going to be confusing at all, but this A stands for absolutely amazing. That's 2 A's. And finally, T for top tier. That went really well, didn't it? You know. Welcome to my Star Wars tier list. If only there was an online video learning site that could teach me how to spell. Well, fortunately, I'm in luck because today's sponsor is Skillshare. And let me tell you all about their online learning community for creators, with thousands of classes for you to explore new skills or help develop existing interests. Like, for example, I recently watched this class by J.R. Ali about how to create enthralling intros for my videos, because I love to do silly skits and stuff like that at the start of my videos, and you're always commenting how much you love my intros. So this immediately stood out to me as something I just had to watch to try and take my intros to the next level. And I mean, when filming that B-roll footage of my new table, which is like an ongoing joke with these tier list videos, I was literally using filming techniques I learned from that video. And it isn't just there for YouTube filming stuff, by the way. I mean, there are courses on learning new languages, music production, and even gardening. All the classes on there are high quality, premium stuff, and they're always releasing more with no ads. So the fact the first 1,000 of you to use my link in the description down below get a free trial of Skillshare for a month is kind of insane. Like, why wouldn't you do that? So yeah, get started on your creative journey today. And yeah, I feel like I should address the elephant in the room. I once said I'd rather rank political ideologies and religions than Star Wars. And in fairness, I've only ever really interacted with Star Wars fans on Twitter, and I just feel like everything I say is wrong, which is weird because can I be wrong? Is that... Maybe, I don't know, I feel like the Star Wars fandom split up into so many factions. There's some people who only like the originals, there's some people who only like the prequels, there's some people who like the sequels, and I kind of like all of it. Is that bad? I don't even know if I want to use the bottom tier, because I think they all did more than something. I literally have included the Clone Wars movie in here, just so I have something to put in the bottom tier. But then I watched it the other day. Like, this was the most recent thing I watched. I watched it last night, and I'm not gonna lie, it was better than I remembered. So I think I'm gonna put it in the tier above, in R, because I really wish it could have been. I wish it could have been as good as the Clone Wars TV show, which I love, by the way, and we'll get into that later. Like, my main takeaway from it was that the story was very disjointed. It felt like one of those straight-to-home video Disney sequels I make videos on, where they combined 3 TV shows into a movie and just called it a day. But hey, it introduced Ahsoka, who's like my favorite character in all of Star Wars, and then managed to make her unbearably annoying. So this wasn't a win, but hey, I had a better time with it than I thought I would, and I just wanted to get that out of the way early on because I don't really have that much to say. And next, I'm gonna do Solo. Solo's just standing out there, and I don't really know where I want to put Solo, but hey, you asked to be first, and I'm gonna put you in the W tier. Because, you know, this film was reasonably impressive. I don't think this is the worst Star Wars film, and it definitely isn't the best. If someone says this is their favorite Star Wars film, I'm gonna assume they've only seen one Star Wars film, being this film. And I really don't imagine there's anyone where this is the only Star Wars film they saw. Like, this is probably the Star Wars film everyone has seen least. Definitely the one I've seen, at least. To be clear, I'm definitely a fan of these Star Wars story movies like Solo and Rogue One, because I feel like they have more freedom to just experiment and be brave with what they're doing. They're not afraid to kill characters off. I feel like there's more room to be lighthearted. There's a lot more humor in there and just free to be itself. You know, I think the portrayals of Han Solo and Lando Calrissian with the new actors are actually surprisingly good. I particularly like Donald Glover's portrayal. And while some of the fan service is definitely very forced and kind of just like, okay, we didn't need to know the story behind what that meant, I also thought a lot of the fan service was really fun. And all in all, I have a fun time with this film. And I've only seen it 2 times, which is the least I've seen any of the Star Wars films. So let's get into something I'm more equipped to talk about. My favorite Star Wars film, on its own in the top tier, The Empire Strikes Back. Which, what can I say? This isn't just one of my favorite Star Wars films of all time. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, this isn't just one of the best sequels to a Star Wars movie. This is just one of the best sequels ever made. I think this is one of the most inventive and creative movies I've ever seen in my life. Like, oh my god, Luke and Han are stuck out on the freezing planet of Hoth. C-3PO says the chances of them surviving is almost impossible. I have no idea how they're actually going to work out how to survive. Well, how about we take shelter inside a dead animal? I love that. That's so clever. And then the scene with Luke coming up with a plan to take out the AT-ATs, not by using brute force, but just knocking them over. The Millennium Falcon escaping the Imperial fleet by blending in with the Imperial fleet. That weird green goblin-like creature living on the swamp planet was actually the most powerful Jedi Master to ever live. Like, I can't imagine how many movie makers have been inspired by this. And this film inspired me. And I'm not even a movie maker. It's the most quotable movie in pop culture, and this is the least surprising take. Everyone's got The Empire Strikes Back somewhere up there on their list, so let's talk about The Mandalorian, which I'm gonna put in the second R tier because I think this is really is good. This is definitely the hardest one to rank. We're only 2 seasons in. They've wrapped up the main storyline over the course of the first 2 seasons. Season 3 could end up being absolutely awful. It gets cancelled before it even gets to a season 4 or 5, and it loses its place in pop culture altogether. Like, I don't think that's gonna happen, but it could. And then this would probably have to drop down a few places on the list. Right now, this show has a place in my heart. It introduced Grogu, it gave Ahsoka her first ever live action performance. Do you realize how big that is? And I don't think I rank this quite as highly as some people. Like, I've seen people rank this up with their favorite Star Wars movies, which it just isn't quite that good for me, but when a Mandalorian season is coming out, every week when that episode drops, it's the highlight of my day. So with that, let's talk about The Phantom Menace, which, I'm gonna be honest, is my least favorite Star Wars movie. I'm gonna put it in the adequate tier. I think this movie definitely has its moments. The Duel of Fate scene at the end, wow. But it's just kind of a mess. The film opens up and you feel like you're in store for something incredible. You've got this Jedi Knight and a Jedi Master in the old Jedi Republic they allude to in the original trilogy. One of those Jedi being Obi-Wan Kenobi, a fan favorite character from the original, and his master, Qui-Gon Jinn, which we were told in the original that Obi-Wan's master was Yoda, which is partly why this is messy, but it's hard to do prequels, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But you need to at least work to your strengths. Make Obi-Wan the main character in this movie if the prequel trilogy is going to be about him. Or alternatively, if it's going to be about Anakin and his rise to the dark side and fallout with Obi-Wan, make it about their relationship. So why do they cut Obi-Wan out of the story and set him aside on the ship while they're dealing with Anakin? And why is Qui-Gon the main character in this movie that gets all the character development and then dies at the end? Not even getting started on Jar Jar Binks, who should have been a Sith Lord. I'm going to stand by this till my dying day. They scrapped that storyline, and actually, I'm wrong. This isn't adequate. This is genuinely wish it could have been better. I'm going to move the Clone Wars down, because I don't think they are on a level. But I do. My ultimate thing is, I wish this was better, and if it had been better, I think Attack of the Clones would have also been better, but for now, I'm gonna have to put it in adequate. This actually is adequate. You see, because The Phantom Menace got a kind of underwhelming response from cinema goers at the time, I feel like they felt the need to change the entire storyline going into the next film. Suddenly Anakin is 10 years older and just has the most creepy, flirty, romantic relationship with a girl who they gave him a big sister relationship with in the last film. Count Dooku literally comes out of nowhere. No backstory, no mentions in the first film, but apparently this fallen Jedi is really important now. He's gonna be the main villain until Palpatine takes charge. Anakin has that one scene where he gets really angry because his mum died, so kills a bunch of innocent people, and that's gonna rationalize why he becomes Darth Vader in the next film, because that's pretty much all the setup you're gonna get until then. There's less than half an hour of them talking about trade disputes in this film, so I have put it ahead of The Phantom Menace, and I do think this film very much gets carried by the Clone Wars, because I do like everything from Palpatine's side of the story with him creating this droid army and making the Jedi have to get their own army of clones, so there's a whole war going on without anyone really dying from it, except he does have a plan to get the clones to turn against the Jedi when he needs them to, but the film ends when the Clone Wars, the only real war in the prequels, begins. And then the next film starts when it's over. But hey, I think the Clone Wars is really good. And I'm going to put it up next to the the Clone Wars has probably too many bad episodes to be next to The Mandalorian. So I think I'm going to have to put it next to Solo. It's better than Solo, but I don't know if I can rank it with The Mandalorian. Like, it's very hit and miss. For every Ahsoka versus Darth Maul fight you get, there's also an episode focused around droids, which no one wants that, except George Lucas, apparently.
Well, my favorite, I can remember.
Really? I'm frightened.
It's the one with the droids.
I only watched this for the first time during the coronavirus lockdown in March 2020, and it's definitely a show that you should watch casually, you know, like half be on your phone while you're watching it, because if you're properly trying to get invested in it, a lot of the episodes are gonna bore you, but watching it casually, I think you can have a really fun time with it. And I think the biggest compliment I can give to it is that before I watched the Clone Wars, I would say Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, when I rank it, would have been a whole tier lower than they actually are. This made me appreciate them so much more because of the development it just gives all of the characters from those movies in general. Yeah, it can be a little childish at times, but you know, I can look past that, have a good time with it. And next, I think it's time to talk about a sequel. So I'm going to talk about The Force Awakens, which I think is my favorite of the sequels, and I'm going to put it in that tier where we're missing a thing. This film is always going to have a huge place in my heart. It was the first Star Wars film I ever saw in cinemas. I remember it was in 2015 December. I was really low. I was having a bad time, and I just remember I came out and said, this is the greatest film I've ever seen in my life. That was an exaggeration in hindsight. Once again, from the opening moments with the stormtroopers on that ship, the lights flashing, the camera shaking, like, it's so well shot, and everything about it just resonated with me on a personal level. Like, I know it's the same as A New Hope, and I don't care, because I didn't get to see A New Hope for the first time in cinemas. This, to me, was my Star Wars. Like, I didn't grow up watching the Star Wars films, interesting. I grew up playing the Star Wars Lego games. That was genuinely my first experience with Star Wars, was playing the Lego games. I had it on my Game Boy Advance and my PS2, and whenever I tried to sit down and watch the films at like 8, 9, 10 years old, I could never get into them because I always thought the first one was The Phantom Menace, because it was called Episode 1. I didn't realize that the actual first one in terms of release was A New Hope, so I always started on The Phantom Menace and could never really get into it. And it wasn't until I was about like 12 or 13, I want to say, that I actually realized that, oh, A New Hope came out first, I'm going to watch this one first, and then I fell in love with it. It was A New Hope that made me fall in love with it, but I never got to see it in cinemas until I saw The Force Awakens, because it was essentially A New Hope in cinemas, and that was just an experience for me, and I appreciate you, The Force Awakens, for that. And I guess we can just talk about A New Hope now, because I'm going to put it right next to it. I'm sorry if that's a war crime and you can be angry about it, because A New Hope is definitely a better film than The Force Awakens, but for me personally, just The Force Awakens means more to me. This is a classic. I'd say it's the perfect film. I don't actually think you could improve it in any way if you tried, and George Lucas did on multiple occasions, making it look significantly worse. And I don't really know what I can say about A New Hope, because you already know what there is to say about A New Hope. It's the perfect starting point for what I think is a fantastic franchise. That sounded really politically correct. I don't know how that came off like that. Also, as a lot of you all know, when I do these tier list videos for big franchises, I do a watch through video a couple days before just to prepare for the video. And so the other day, I watched through all the Star Wars movies. And by the other day, I mean, I did it over 2 days. I didn't watch it all in one day because I'm not cut out to doing crazy challenges like that. And I haven't cut it down yet. There's 8 hours of footage to get through. But I think everything I can possibly say about A New Hope will be in that video. So make sure to leave a like and get this video to, I'm gonna set a low target, 5,000 likes if you want to see that video. Anyway, let's get on by talking about everyone's favorite Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker, which I'm gonna go put in here. Actually, I think it's better than Solo. I'm gonna go that far. When I first watched it, it reminded me of Attack of the Clones in a way I couldn't really explain. Like, it almost felt like it was its own worst enemy. None of the issues the characters were facing in the film seemed to arise naturally. It was like they needed to create problems for the characters to face so they had something to do, and the minute something was resolved, new problem arises. And I don't know, the one thing that seems to live in my mind rent-free is that festival they go to at the start without really achieving anything by going there, and like, it doesn't feel like Star Wars for some reason. And that's always my biggest complaint with Attack of the Clones. That Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme are in this big arena about to be eaten by monsters. Like, this isn't a Star Wars film. I want to see spaceships shooting lasers, people using the Force and lightsaber fire. Okay, no, not that many. You took that too far. And I definitely think The Mandalorian has played a huge part on this film growing on me, because every time I watch it now, I seem to like it more than I did the last time. And The Mandalorian patching up parts of the story to help make sense of how Palpatine came back and how Rey came about while also being a child of Palpatine while also still being a nobody really helps. Because without all that, this was a massive mess, and I still don't think it's perfect. I'm a bit annoyed that Finn got sidelined so massively, but this is also the first film where we get to see Rey, Finn, and Poe from this trilogy all together, so it has its pros, it has its cons. It's not my favorite, but it's also not my least favorite. And let's talk about next Revenge of the Sith, the final prequel, and I'm gonna go put it in front of The Mandalorian because I think it's a really good film. This is the Star Wars film I feel like I have the most to say about while saying the least. Like, I could fully rationalize putting it down with The Phantom Menace because I wish this was better. This has the potential to be the best Star Wars film if they just used what they had to their advantage more. Like, it's good, don't get me wrong, the story, I think it's great, but it could have been the best, and I mean, some people think this is the best, and fair on you, but for me, this just doesn't quite live up to the likes of Empire Strikes Back or A New Hope, but being its best self. With that said though, it has some of the best moments in all of Star Wars. Like, if I was just to change this tier list and make it a top 10 lightsaber duels in Star Wars, this film single-handedly takes up half the list. And I really like a film that has that sort of non-stop action nature to it. I mean, Infinity War is exactly that, done to perfection, and Infinity War, I would say, tops this list over Empire Strikes Back. It's the only film that I can make a strong argument is better than Empire Strikes Back. And then, you know, the Toy Story films. Anyway, point is, Revenge of the Sith, good. Return of the Jedi, also good. These two films are very similar to me, and they're going to be ranked very close to each other. I'm going to say Revenge of the Sith is slightly better, but Return of the Jedi is still a very strong end to the original trilogy. Like, I think for me, it would be almost impossible for this movie to top The Empire Strikes Back, because that is almost the perfect sequel, and to make the perfect prequel, you can't do that unless you're Toy Story. But that's not to say this movie isn't almost the perfect final installment. I mean, some of those moments with Yoda dying on Dagobah, Luke meeting the Emperor for the first time, finding out that Luke and Leia are actually sisters in just like the biggest twist ever, other than the one that happened in the last film that was probably bigger, but they're tied in a way because it means Leia is also Darth Vader's daughter. The unfinished Death Star actually being fully operational. It's a trap. I mean, this is an iconic movie. I'm not questioning it. There are just some really long, weird moments. I mean, that whole performance with that weird alien singing at Jabba's palace. What was that? I believe that was one of the things added in by Lucas at a later date, but still weird. And like, Ewoks are cute and all, but did we really need them playing such an important part in terms of taking down the Empire? Let's talk about Rebels. I was meant to talk about this earlier, but I feel like I associate this with the Clone Wars very closely because I watched them together when I first watched them, so I think I'm just gonna have to put it right next to them. It feels like a sequel show that lives up to the original, but it isn't an anthology show. It follows an actual select group of characters so you can get invested in them throughout the story, and you do. I'm really attached to the characters from Rebels, and it has some great cameos, including Darth Vader, Ahsoka, they get their big fight, Obi-Wan and Darth Maul's final meeting with Maul dying on Tatooine in such a tender scene. I mean, this even introduces time travel into the Star Wars series, and I think I genuinely consider ranking this ahead of the Clone Wars, but I think the highs of the Clone Wars are higher than the highs of Rebels, and while I also think the lows are lower, it's a bit of a negative outset to say I disliked more things with this, so therefore it's worse, rather than saying I liked more things with this, so therefore it's better. Because, yeah, there's just a weird outset to have. I guess that means it's time for The Last Jedi. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm in a bit of a weird position with The Last Jedi, because anytime I watch it, I'm always thinking, yeah, this is way better than The Force Awakens, but The Force Awakens is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I've ranked The Force Awakens ahead of A New Hope because of its resonance with me, but The Last Jedi definitely isn't better than A New Hope. It's a never-ending cycle. Today, I am gonna put it behind A New Hope. I'm not feeling it as much as when I watched it the other day. I think it's kind of similar to Return of the Jedi, where it has its moments that are like top-tier Star Wars, and also has those bits where you're kind of like, oh, okay, what did you do that for? Like, the opening scene is so warlike, and it just feels right for a Star Wars film to have this sort of tone, and then they make a your mum joke. Rey spends half the last film searching for Luke Skywalker and brings him his old lightsaber and he chucks it over his shoulder. And I think my biggest problem with this film, every time I watch this, I think this: why did they cut Maz Kanata's potential storyline out of it? Like, she sends Finn and Rose on this wild goose chase to find some random person in a casino for something she could have just done herself. But then, with that said, this has some of the best, if not the best moments in all of Star Wars. Rey's training in the Force at the ancient Jedi Temple is some just absolutely breathtaking filmmaking. That scene with Rey and Kylo taking on the Emperor's guards, and then Kylo having his Cloud City join me moment, and Rey saying no and them destroying the lightsaber simultaneously with the lightspeed crash. Then Luke taking on an entire army on his own and tricking Kylo Ren into having that final lightsaber battle with him and then dying in front of two setting suns. It's poetic. Oh my gosh. Only one more film. Rogue One. I don't know why I saved that for last, but hey, Rogue One has one of the best final scenes in a film, so I've left it to the end for that poetic reason. That made sense. And I think that just belongs right next to The Mandalorian. I feel like I don't even have that much to say about Rogue One. It's a beautiful looking film. That final battle on that beach planet. I mean, I think in general, all the newer Star Wars movies just look so good. The prequels are too much CGI and special effects. The originals are amazing for their time, but it's been 40 years. Also, the Vader hallway scene at the end is maybe my favorite moment in all of Star Wars, which, take of that what you want. This film's carried by its ending. I think that's all I can really say. It's got an okay start, an okay middle, but I watched it the other day and I can't even really remember a lot of it, but the ending, yeah, that's a good ending. I think it's probably the most out there premise for a Star Wars movie too. I mean, they're making a story about some characters that existed from the title credits of the first movie. Like, who are the band of rebels that managed to steal the Death Star plans? Meet them all in Rogue One. And I'm pretty sure I said this a good hour ago, but the Star Wars story movies are exceptional at creating their own world and having that creativity to do their own thing. So I really hope they make more of them. I mean, they've done a lot of Star Wars announcements lately without that many of them, mostly focusing on TV show orientated stuff. But for now, that is my tier list. I've just realized as well, the tier list is up there on screen, isn't it? Because I'm looking at it from this. Okay, that is my tier list. And with all the Star Wars content coming soon, that will only be like half the Star Wars content in like 10 years time. So maybe I'll do a second one then. If you enjoy this video, leave a like and let me know you want a second one then. Maybe The Empire Strikes Back will be in the bottom half by then. Unlikely, but you know, could happen. And yeah, you can subscribe to my channel, watch another video, and check out my Patreon in the description down below. Thanks for watching. I feel like that outro came out of nowhere today, but we were at the end of the video, so I don't think anyone can really complain.